I've had enough of men with pathetic egos willy-waggling. But what do you want?
To say I'm sorry. I shouldn't have embarrassed you.
No, you shouldn't.
Look, I screwed up with the scam, okay? But until yesterday, me and Gran, we were doing all right. More than all right. So if you think you can just ride in here like Charlie Big Potatoes and start calling the shots...
What?
Well, I'd sooner you just went.
Charlie Big Potatoes?
The talk of the street.
Talk of the street.
The talk of the street.
Talk of the street.
The talk of the street.
Talk of the street.
The talk of the street.
Talk of the street.
Hello and welcome to episode 173 of the Talk of the Street, an unofficial Coronation Street catch-up podcast that admires Chesney's contrived ability to take control of a situation by knocking harder and shouting louder at a deaf person in a community centre until the police arrive. I'm Gavin.
And I've got a soggy bottom.
So we've all got soggy bottoms today, haven't we?
It's been raining all week long. All week long.
The world is made of rain.
Yes. We had a break yesterday.
It rained a little bit yesterday.
And then it's back. We had sun. I actually saw the sun yesterday.
I don't believe it. It's all lies.
And now it's back to grey and rain. Fortunately, our basement is dry. And so I take comfort from that. Our yard is quite soggy, though.
I have a rule.
Do you?
I
think you have several
rules.
rules.
The primary rule I have, though, is no jeans till October, which involves me not wearing jeans until October.
Right.
I wear shorts.
Right.
I wear shorts for the whole summer.
Yeah.
From as early as I can, typically mid-April. I'm wearing shorts for basically 6 months. Mm-hmm. I had to put on jeans this week.
Yeah.
And it's not April.
Yeah.
And I feel...
And it's not October.
It's made me depressed.
Yeah. Typically my rule is no closed-toe shoes until October, but I've been wearing my really comfy Ugg closed shoes predominantly all summer because Benny wore my Nike slides towards the end of the school year last year and lost them. So this is what happens when you're kids and you kind of share a shoe size. Fortunately, his feet are...
And he has no boundaries.
Much bigger than mine now, so...
Yeah, the extension to the whole jeans thing is I don't really wear socks or shoes either.
No.
But there are times when you have to accept that you do have to wear shoes, and if you're wearing shoes then you have to wear socks.
Right.
But I'm firm on the jeans. And the only thing that I wore other than shorts this summer was my kilt.
Yes.
So my poor wee legs, all covered up in jeaned denim.
Oh.
So unhappy about this. So unhappy.
I kind of like putting my jeans on and my sweatpants on and stuff again. I kind of like putting the heavier throw on the bed and crawling underneath it and getting all snuggly.
I think anyway, this is not a podcast about
our bed linens.
Right. It's interesting. Maybe that would be what would that be called? Linen a Go-Go with Helen Broom. So how have you been otherwise? Other than your soggy bottom.
I went to see Respect on Wednesday in the middle of the day. Because on Wednesdays and Thursdays I get out early from my job. So, and we have this movie
pass
thing. Only it's not movie pass. It's something very specific to the theaters here. And it's a much better deal, I think, than movie pass ended up being.
It's very reminiscent of the Cineworld Unlimited card that I had in the UK.
Mm-hmm. So, and you didn't want to sit through 2.5 hours of Aretha Franklin's life.
No. As much as I enjoy her music, I didn't want to sit for 2.5 hours in the movie theatre.
It was good. It suffers from what a lot of biopics do, of trying to cram too much of a person's life into a movie. And so you have something that's like a really important life moment for this person, and then 5 minutes later it's over and they've moved on to something else, you know.
I don't know. I think rock biopics, or musical biopics, always make me think of the scene in Bohemian Rhapsody when they come up with "We Will Rock You," and it's just so cringe. Everything about it when they have those pivotal moments
Right.
of their life.
Yeah.
Seeing it dramatized is never satisfying.
Right.
It's always kind of manufactured and contrived because it is.
Right. Yeah, this was more, you know, along the lines of when she was raped as a child and then experienced spousal abuse with her first husband. But, you know, there's a scene where first there's a scene where she and her sisters and her children and her grandmother are dancing around their house to Otis Redding's Respect. And you're like, oh, seeds are being planted here. And then you have a scene where, you know, it's the middle of the night and she is at the piano rearranging Otis Redding's Respect. And her sisters wake up. And then her husband wakes up and says, what the hell are you doing? This Otis Redding song, blah, blah, blah. You'll never make that a hit, blah, 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 which is a scene that is in every biopic where somebody says, you'll never make that a hit.
Right, and that's a contrived bit I'm talking
but
about.
at least
more than the rape and the spouse abuse.
Right, but at least they didn't have Mike Myers playing her husband, so it's a step up.
I hear he was in line for it.
It's
he was going to do it Scottish.
It's a step up from Bohemian Rhapsody in that respect, in not having Mike Myers play a
small victories.
Yes. And also, I've caught some really weird hacky cough, which is not COVID, but it's still annoying.
Which is going to add at least an hour to my editing time as I do my best to take them all out.
Yes.
Fantastic.
How are you?
All right. Shall we preamble, my dear?
Yes, please.
Give us some of that shagadelic Corrie news.
Shagadelic.
Mike Myers.
Ah, yeah. Okay.
Do keep up.
Yeah. With 90s Mike Myers movies. Sorry, Michael Myers, completely different person. Curtis may not be just a zombie. He might also have a clone as well, or a few clones. Some sneaky trolls on social media have been impersonating Sam Retford and attempting to meet up with fans and steal their money.
What?
Yeah. Sam has said he has pared down his social media way down in the aftermath and is now only on Instagram. He has gotten off of Twitter and off of Facebook. So if you see somebody pretending to be Sam Retfield on Twitter or Facebook, they're lying. They're trying to do something, either take your money or murder you. So don't...
What a random chain of events that is.
I'm sure it happens with other people all the time as well. But
I guess it's not exclusively him, I guess.
Right.
But
he also said he had been experiencing some bullying because people would slide into his DMs and then get mad when he didn't respond to them. You know, so they'd go from, oh, we really love Curtis. Oh, you're such a good actor, to fuck you, you asshole. Why are you not responding to my DMs? You know, you must be, you know, some snobby prick for not thinking of the little guys, and we put you where you are, blah, 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 blah.
You're paraphrasing, I sense.
Oh, we bet.
Or maybe the
not.
culprit has been identified live on the podcast.
Yes, because I have time to impersonate Curtis.
Well, that's exactly what somebody who didn't have time would say.
See, I know people get really snarky about the blue checks. And, you know, have opinions about blue check people, but it actually is very helpful when, you know, trying to differentiate between the real person and the many, 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 many fan pages.
Yeah, all the
that
parody
exist.
ones as well.
Right. It happens all the time. Mm-hmm. And even like famous people accidentally tag the wrong people in their tweets, and it's actually a fan page and stuff. So, yeah. Be careful out there, folks, and try not to get duped into meeting random actors from Coronation Street.
People deliberately go out to get duped.
No.
Oh.
But if there's people who are actually actively saying, oh, yes, I want to meet Sam Retfield, I don't know. Anyway, moving on.
This is how the best news items on TV end, is with the newsreader going, I don't know. But anyway.
Maybe they should. Maybe they should admit every once in a while that they don't know instead of speculating. Moving on. Helen Worth got together with former lover and potential stepdad Nigel Havers to talk about the old days. She mentioned the fact that his real-life wife approached her in a butcher's once and introduced herself by saying, and I quote, "The last time I saw you, you were kissing my husband." Laughs were had by all except for the butcher, who was busy hiding the knives in the back.
Right.
I remember the person I was married to before you had a brief...
Your ex-husband is it's a shorthand for that.
Did some acting while we were married, and there was one time he was in this play where he kind of had to roll around in a bed with another woman, and there were people who were like, "Oh, are you okay with that? You know, doesn't that make you uncomfortable?" And I was like, "No, it's acting. I've done some myself. It's fine. It's just acting. It's not that big of a deal." But it's funny that, you know...
Your ex-husband.
Yes. The person he was rolling around with on stage was not the person who broke up our marriage.
Okay.
Obviously. Well, because you know the person who broke up our marriage.
I'm trying to think of...
His most recent ex-wife.
Oh, of course, yeah. Yes. God, I'm just thankful that your ex-husband's life isn't my chosen specialised subject of mastermind.
What are you talking about? You guys are like best friends on Facebook.
Moving on.
Finally, in the most bizarre photos I've ever witnessed on the internet, U.S. Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, stepped behind the bar of the Rovers for a photo op. Our Nancy was in the UK for the G7 and was one of a number of speakers to visit the set, because why not? It's not like there's anything important happening in the world right now.
Right.
And that's Corrie News.
I enjoyed particularly the photograph of Nancy standing next to David Nielsen, Roy,
Yes.
with Molly Gallagher, Nina, and it looked like Roy and Nancy Pelosi were Nina's parents. It's kind of how it looked to me.
I really did admire her orange pantsuit, though. She really stood out amongst all the European and British people standing in a line in blacks and browns and greys, and then there's our Nancy in bright orange.
Very fetch, straight
Yes.
from Guantanamo Bay. And now we'll podcast for coffee. No new coffees this week. Which is fine.
It's fine.
I've had an embarrassment of Richie's recently.
Embarrassment over it.
But this is the last week of our rescue.org International Rescue Committee fundraiser, if you like.
Yes.
For the humanitarian aid in Afghanistan. So if you want to donate money to that, you can buy us a coffee and we will send that money to rescue.org. We'll be doing this up until the end of the month,
Yes.
which is Friday? Thursday? Friday?
September 30th.
It's the shorthand for that.
Whatever that is. Hold
Right.
on.
I think it's Thursday.
Thursday. Yeah.
Thursday. Yeah.
Thursday.
Yeah.
Because Friday is October 1st when Venom Let There Be Carnage comes out.
That's not why it's in my diary. No. It's in my diary for being 1 year sober.
Woohoo!
Anyway. So if you want to buy us next week's coffee, then you can go to ko-fi.com. That's ko-fi.com/the talk of the street. And we'll be very appreciative for it. And now, this.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Well, welcome to Last Year Tonight with me, John Oliver. Just enough time to quickly talk about Saltier Than a Sailor's Sweat.
Tasty.
That's right, this was Mary's advice regarding the baking Fizz had done. Fizz had made some cakes or biscuits or something, and
Right,
Mary
yes.
ran and warned everyone, don't taste them, they're saltier than a
Right, she
sailor's
made
sweat.
them for Oliver's fundraising.
I believe you're right.
Yeah, she made them to help support Oliver.
Now I remember why. I remember why she fucked up the recipe. Tyrone sabotaged them.
Yes.
Because he wanted to have the tastiest, and he wanted to have the tastier cakes. I think she would have been a bit of an asshole as well, would you believe?
Yeah, he's a bigger asshole though.
I was Gavin and you had a sore throat again, and you were the dog drinking coffee in a burning room again.
Yeah.
It was fine.
This is fine.
It was one of the most depressing preambles we'd ever done, but you rejected 2 offers to start again. Do you want to start this again? No, just keep on going.
Just keep going.
We piloted a short-lived section
Plow
called
through.
What Made Gav Cry Last Week. John Oliver answering journalists' questions after winning his 5th Emmy made me cry.
Aw.
And Nandi Bushell, the 10-year-old drummer, she was 9-year-old at the time, and her rivalry with Dave Grohl, that made me cry as well.
You didn't cry this year when John Oliver won an Emmy. Actually, I think he won 2 Emmys this year.
It wasn't him winning it that made me cry. It was seeing his interview
afterwards.
With the press afterwards, where he was talking about how he was just trying to keep his staff going.
Right.
And it was very heartfelt and very emotional.
Yes.
That wee drummer lassie, she released a video, I think last week, maybe the week before, of her playing
with
the Foo Fighters in concert in front of tens of thousands of people.
I know, it's awesome.
There's a secondary bit to the video where you see kind of the behind the scenes thing, where she turns up at the arena and they're doing the sound check, and she's doing the end fills during Everlong, and she's taking instruction from Dave Grohl, who's kind of telling her just kind of go crazy for a little bit, and then and you can tell by his face when he wants her to do the final hit the cymbals, and then the song's done, and she follows him perfectly.
Yes.
And so when he's done, when the band's finished playing, you can see he's trying not to laugh as he walks back to his microphone and says, "I think we've got a rock concert." And this was the rehearsal.
It's so sweet how proud of her he is,
right?
And how supportive he has been of this wee lassie.
Who'd have thought that story would have been what got us through this? Anyway, everyone prepares to sell everything in advance of Oliver's experimental German therapy, while Emma, Tyrone and Fizz get their charitable heads into fundraising mode. The Daniel and Nikki storyline moves from creepy as fuck to Pretty Woman territory as she seems to fall for his white knight ways. Talking of which, Peter's obsession with helping out Abby comes back to bite him on the bum thanks to Debbie's Olympic standard jumping to conclusions. Michael has no idea of the types of faces Grace is pulling behind his back. Billy and his man-bagger on the receiving end of a virtual Eileen smash. It's been a while since we've had an Eileen smash.
Correct.
Tim's dad has taken to carrying thousands of pounds in cash on his person. Brian and Mary declare World War III, and their moment of the week was George's apology to Mary, which nearly became another thing to make me cry. He ordered a bouquet to deliver to herself because he'd been so nasty to her. And our boring moment of the week was Leanne explaining laundry to a comatose Oliver. And that was Coronation Street and the Talk of the Street this time last year.
Where we gave the boring moment of the week to a dying child.
And that's why we're going to hell.
One of many reasons.
Yep. Join the queue. Or in America, the line. Shall we dive in, my dear?
Yes, please.
We have less to get through this week than last week. So that's good news.
And it's all rubbish.
Our first storyline this morning is Tim's mum about the house.
Woo!
That's a good tune.
It is a good tune. You did good.
Thanks. Ripping off something. On Monday, Zeedan recaps where we left off last week. He's here to invest in a local business, and it might as well be Speed Dial, which he set up in the first place. Yasmin, like Alia, is suspicious of where he got his 50,000, but they're forced to accept because of their dire money situation.
Correct.
Zeedan and Alia are walking to Speed Dial when Z spots Ryan walking to Roy Rolls, and he thinks there are scores to be settled here. He stomps by a souped-up Subaru that has 2 shifty-looking fellows sitting inside it. Simon's already in Roy's Rolls when Ryan comes in, closely followed by Zeedan. Simon's very pleased to see Zeedan, Ryan less so, although this is the first time the two of them have met. Alia slinks in and hears Ryan talk about losing Alia being a monumental mistake in his life, and then Zeedan calls Ryan a coward for doing nothing about Tim's dad.
Oh, fuck you, Zeedan.
Right?
This is the first fuck you, Zeedan. It won't be the last.
I think you got a packet of fuck you Zedans from the shop before we started this.
I did. I stored up.
Shall we talk about Zeedan's hair just off
No.
the bat? No. Okay then. Ryan, we've just saved ourselves 15 minutes.
Thank you.
Ryan takes exception to this and goes to knock Zeedan's stupid Lego hair. No, we haven't. Off his head when Alia intervenes, calling out Zeedan for doing fuck all about Tim's dad and telling him to shove his money up his arse.
Right up his arse.
Early with that this week. Tim's mum and Kathy are chatting about Alia being scammed, and Tim's mum wants to get Alia and Yasmin a sorry you fell for it present. So Kathy and Tim's mum head into town to get a nice gift.
Right.
She's so thoughtful, Tim's mum.
Yes.
She's not driven by plot at all.
No.
At speed dial, Yasmin worries that this is a lifeline they can't afford to turn down. Z comes down to apologise. Alia points out that he can't come in and play Charlie Big Potatoes now. So Zeedan is about to go and pack when Alia stops him. If anyone's going to punch Ryan, it'll be her.
Yes.
Yasmin sends him off to buy ingredients for a feast. And then you can tell me all about your beautiful wife and the 10 gorgeous great-grandchildren you're about to give me.
I know. And I was like, Yasmin, 10 from one? From one grandchild? You want 10? What is wrong with you? I thought you were a thoroughly modern woman.
She wants Miriam to push herself inside out, given great-grandchildren there.
Apparently. Yikes.
And Zeedan does his first 2-second smell fade. Zeedan is walking by the Alleyway of Doom when he's jumped by the pair from the Subaru and he's killed.
We can only hope.
Or so we're led to believe. Alia and Yasmin have a... If only he had been killed. Alia and Yasmin have a chance to have a private word, and Alia has concerns about Zeedan's violent reaction to Ryan, and also the questions over his money. And where the fuck has he got to anyway? Back in town and fresh from a liquid lunch, Tim's mum and Kathy stumble upon the body in the Alleyway of Doom. Tim's mum is strangely doing a little fashion show in the middle of the street for Kathy. And then Kathy notices the body in the alleyway.
Right. Yeah, because they want to see this pretty flashy
Towel?
Pashima scarf that they bought.
Honestly, I thought it was a towel.
It's a bit long for a towel, my darling. Is it a towel for a python?
You know, it dries the parts that other towels can't reach.
It would chafe if you did that in real life. There's sequins on it.
Well, it wasn't a towel.
No.
Anyway. So Simon is in speed dial looking for
You
Zeedan.
just wanted an excuse to do that, didn't you?
He still isn't back. Then Tim's mum comes in shouting on Yasmin, "It's Zeedan, there's been a terrible accident."
Oh no!
So because of plot, Simon goes with Alia to the hospital to see Zeedan, and when Zeedan tells PC Tinker he doesn't know who attacked him, a furious Simon, who really needs to get his whole enchilada fuck
Actually,
out,
PC Tinker isn't there yet. Is he?
yeah,
Oh, he is.
tells him,
I don't know. Craig just kind of fades into the wallpaper sometimes.
yeah. So Simon is there to point his grassy little finger at Ryan. He threatened him earlier, officer. So PC Tinker takes Simon.
What is Simon's relationship to Zeedan?
I can't remember.
This must have happened before I started watching the show, because I'm like, why is Simon so invested in Zeedan?
Well, Simon also says, I could have really done with his advice earlier this year. About what? And why? About the drug thing?
This is the first time I've ever heard Simon mention Zeedan at all. Like, all the time that he's been gone, not once has Simon said, I really miss Zeedan. And no, I don't recall Simon bumping into Yasmin and chatting with her about Zeedan ever, or Alia. Something must have happened way back in the day, like he was his babysitter or something weird. But
the fact that he's there at the hospital, just what the fuck is Simon doing
what
there?
is going on here? I was so confused. I'm sure we're having a
Somebody will tell us.
yeah.
Scott.
John.
PC Tinker takes Simon's word as gospel, and despite Alia's doubts, he goes off to speak with Ryan. Zeedan is discharged, and while Alia and Yasmin go to get the car, he gets a crank, heavy breathing call. He's into those mucky sex lines.
That was really weird. It's like, was that supposed to be threatening to a dude?
I'm not going to reenact it just
Please
in case I turn anybody on.
Please don't. Please don't.
But it was one of those
It was weird.
0898 numbers, wasn't it?
It was weird. Let's just put it at that.
they've all just got home when Ryan bursts in. Ryan pretty much puts Alia through the wall here when he bursts into the house. And he's furious that he's had to speak to Craig. Yasmin is shocked given how much of a rock Ryan has been to the family recently.
He puts ITV stuff on to shame with his entrance.
That was a very dramatic entrance. Poor Alia's just holding her nose and there's blood in her. Jeez. Ryan, though, is surprised that Alia didn't jump to his defence. Alia apologises, and after Yasmin's prompting, so does Zeedan. Alia and Yasmin chat more about Zeedan's attackers. Yasmin thinks it was random, and Zeedan overhears, and Alia wonders why he isn't angry about this, and why he's ignoring calls on his phone all of a sudden. What is he hiding? So Zeedan is forced to reveal that his marriage is over, Miriam was a cow, and his father-in-law is some kind of gangster type and wants him dead, but the money's legit.
Sure.
On Wednesday,
It sounds very legit.
it's morning in the Nazir house, and Alia is still curious as to why Zeedan left Miriam. He admits to having an affair, and then Yasmin arrives with D.S. Fringe's number, set to call her until Zeedan comes clean to her about being a scally. So we don't really get a chance for anyone to have a go at Zeedan for being unfaithful after having such a fit at Sharif, and Rana for doing the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
At speed dial, Yasmin wants to know where the 50 grand came from, and Zeedan is typically evasive. He wants to buy back into his business, and Yasmin says, well, it's my fucking business now, and he's buying back into nothing. Zeedan goes to the Rovers to apologise to Ryan. He also tells Ryan that the way Alia talks about him, it's clear that she's still hurting, but she still must think a lot of him. So Zeedan is ready to leave. So Yasmin agrees to take his loan on the condition that he stays under her roof, which is the strangest condition ever. And if there's any hint of nonsense from his in-laws, she'll be on the phone to DS Fringe pronto.
Right, because he's about ready to leave, and she doesn't want him to leave because I guess she kind of feels like if he's under her thumb, he's safer.
She can keep an eye on him.
Yeah.
Sure.
Fine.
Or is it just that there's nowhere else for him to stay?
Well, there is, but then he'd be off the show again.
Yeah. But we need to keep him on the show because
Right. Plot.
he's here for at least 6 months, I would guess.
Really?
Well, that's how the contracts work, isn't it?
I don't know.
And that's as far as we get with that this week. So does any of this help us understand where Zeedan got his money from?
No. No, not really. Unless he
Just
stole...
a 50 grand burning a hole in his bank account.
Unless he stole it from his father-in-law, and that's why the father-in-law wants to kill him, not because of some honor of his daughter.
It just feels like the whole thing is a damp squib. That he suddenly appears, and well,
Right.
why have you suddenly appeared?
Right. When you should have suddenly appeared many, many times before.
Mm-hmm. Or weeks from now, which is when he was due to appear or
Right.
something. And then, oh, it's you left your wife.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you were cheating on her.
Oh,
Oh.
okay.
This all seems very plot 101. I expect something a little bit more exciting than that.
Yeah.
So maybe this is just
Maybe it's coming.
Maybe this is just a
Maybe it's,
ruse to throw people off the scent.
right. Or it's setting something up, something bigger up.
And
I keep hearing that there's going to be more big dramatic stunts coming in the weeks to come.
oh, could you roll your eyes anymore? Let me pick them up and roll them right back at you.
I think everybody knows how I feel about,
More guns.
dramatic stunts when, the show is much more appealing to me when it's character driven, but, you know.
We saw some aspects of that this week.
It is what it is.
I thought it was strange, though, that if the father-in-law sent those two heavies, who I assume are brothers,
Yeah, or cousins or something.
a part of his family, part of
Yeah.
the father-in-law's family, in-laws to Zeedan,
Yeah,
if they wanted to kill him,
they would have.
they had the perfect opportunity to do so, and,
Yeah.
they didn't. And they didn't even come close.
No.
They just
It
smeared a
felt
bit of
more
jam on his face.
threatening, like, you need to do something for us. You need to pay us back, maybe. Or you need to come back to your wife or something like that.
Just roughed him up a little bit.
The storyline also feels a little icky to me in that respect, that we're having members of the Brown cast do this storyline about dishonor to the family and threatening the son-in-law who has dishonored my daughter. Blah 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 blah.
Kind
blah,
of why
blah,
I
blah.
hope it's not that. I hope there's something more to it than that.
Yeah, but it's also kind of icky that that's even being broached as a possible reason.
Is
You
there
know?
still mileage in Zeedan being the scammer, do you think? That's looking less and less likely, I think. It seemed so obvious last week.
I still think it might be possible. I still think it's like some ploy of his. Because he does say to Yasmin this week that he would have never sold his shares in Speed Doll if she hadn't pressured him, if Tim's dad hadn't pressured him.
All right.
So there's a bit of me that thinks that this is all just a ploy to get Speed Doll back, but
Right, he feels a bit wronged by this.
right.
That he was, he sold his shares under false pretenses.
Right. So it kind of feels like maybe he did the scamming to get the 50K
To buy his way back in.
to kind of buy his way back in, but that doesn't really explain the heavies.
Right.
Unless, he paid to have them help him with this and now they're not getting paid. I don't know.
Oh, life was so much simpler when Chesney was just hitting himself in the face with a brick, wasn't it? This does seem to keep the door
longed for
open a
those
bit
days.
for Ryan and Alia's reconciliation,
Yes.
which I hope happens.
Yeah,
right?
me too. That's again, that's one couple I hope gets back together.
Alrighty then,
Yeah.
let's move on to our next storyline, which is Mac's new Headroom. Now, you gave me kudos for that title last week.
I did.
It's already lost its luster.
No.
Oh.
I like that. The storyline's shit. I'm sighing because of this ridiculous storyline where two blonde men and one blonde child stand in a street and shout at one another. This is...
Well,
they've
you're
been
pissing all over my notes, by the way.
talking about this stupid storyline, talking up, ooh, we got a new Max for this new, more gritty storyline and blah, 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 blah. And the gritty storyline is a kid doesn't want to do his homework.
Well, so far. But anyway, I spent time writing these notes, and damn it,
All
I'm
right,
going to read
fine,
them out.
let's go.
On Monday, Summer is fretting in Roy's Rolls about her university application. Oh, she frets an awful lot about things, which is Summer.
Right, yes. Even before she got the new head, she was very fretful about
I've been
schoolwork.
watching some old Corrie recently.
Uh-huh.
You fall down the rabbit hole. It's on YouTube. It automatically plays the next
It's
one
fine,
for you.
it's fine.
From 2017.
You
and
don't need to excuse this behavior.
I wasn't aware I was. Summer. This is Summer's entrance time in
Right.
2017 when she had the old head.
Right.
And the more that I watched that at the time, we're doing a really good job here of, not us, of maintaining that that kid.
Uh-huh.
If you just think of Summer being Summer and it doesn't matter who's been playing her, I feel like it's more seamless than I was giving it credit for. Because she has lots of these aspects of her when she first arrived. I'm seeing them still.
The
in Summer
anxiety
here.
over schoolwork has always been there.
Right. So anyway, Bernie thinks that she has a blockage in her cosmic energy. Daniel comes in and catches the end of it, and we learn that Summer is applying for Oxford, so Daniel offers to help out at school later. Bernie offers to clear out any blockages in Daniel's cosmic energy.
Right.
And seems to contemplate that a little
Yeah,
bit.
instead he wants a sausage roll to further complicate that blockage.
Right. In school, Daniel is giving Summer private advice, boosting her confidence to write about what she's passionate about. Because remember that time that she did that thing that was lovely? Write about that.
Right, yeah. Remember that time that you set up this whole thing for suicide awareness and stuff? Remember that?
Well, that was not yesterday.
No.
And Summer,
That was
she
when
does remember it.
That was when we first set up this podcast.
Yep. She asks about further private lessons, but he has to knock her back because of the whole Max thing, and he's not doing the private tutoring anymore. Daniel's back in the street and shocked to see her stressed out. Summer basically tell Billy to go suck a bag of dicks when he offers to take her to Speed Dial for dinner. Where do you think I'm getting time for Speed Dial? Billy. So Daniel tracks Summer down to Roy's Rolls
She's too busy to eat.
and reveals that due to her outburst with Billy, Yeah, she's got time to go to Roy's Rolls though.
Right, yeah.
Check her out, verse with Billy. He's changed his mind and agrees to help her out more on her application, but just because she's not scared to put in the work.
Right,
So that's
yeah.
a differentiator for him. On Wednesday, Max is on his way to school when David catches up to him with his homework. Max claims he doesn't have any homework because of his ADHD and explains that teachers are cautious not to erode his confidence by giving him too much work. And David utterly falls for it.
Yeah, well, we've fallen for that before.
Well, we've fallen for it, but we've also just accepted it because we don't want that argument now.
Right.
We'll have the argument later.
But we also, when challenged, well, if you don't believe me, call the teacher. Unlike David, we call the teacher.
I remember one time Benny hid his homework outside so I wouldn't find it. And I watched him from a window do it and then promptly grounded him when he came in. Now go out and unhide that homework. Later at Roy's Rolls, David spots Daniel and makes some light banter about having one less mark due to Max's ADHD homework thing. Daniel's quick to disabuse him of this, says Max hasn't handed anything in and all he's done is made a twat out of his dad. David is why I order and storms out. Mm-hmm. On Friday, David and Shona are bitching about Daniel, David reckoning Daniel has a type, what with him tutoring Bethany, so that would explain the whole summer thing. Well, does he know about summer thing at this point?
Yes. Oh, wait. No, he doesn't. You haven't gotten to the point where Summer is entering Daniel's house and David yells at Daniel about it and saying, "Oi, what about my kid?
I think I've missed that out.
You're playing favorites here on the street, you." This is the first time they're shouting at one another on the street.
Yeah, I've missed that out.
Not the last time.
Me, after making such a big deal about being so precious about these notes, I've either missed this out or put it in a different storyline. Yeah, that happens.
Yeah.
You've explained it.
Yes.
So yeah.
In fairness to David, I think he's still smarting a little bit from Daniel publicly calling him a twat.
Right.
So, which is not, it's not that far off the mark, but it's kind of ridiculous because you'd think that Max would at least be smart enough to know that David's going to find out because Daniel lives on the street.
Mm-hmm. They always find out. That's the thing.
Yeah.
They always find out.
No.
Anyway, so David and Shona Shona's not really doing this. This is David bitching about Daniel and tutoring Bethany and all that
She
sort
seemed
of
a bit more like old Shona this week.
She did. Max is slinking downstairs and overhears this like a wrong'un. Meanwhile, Daniel has shit himself about going to school and crying to Ken about it, but Ken doesn't care because he has a funeral to attend in a different storyline. At school, Max is having a laugh with his mate, but
And also, let's be fair, Ken just doesn't care.
Doesn't care. But Misery Guts Daniel wants to know what's so funny. Max insists it was just schoolwork, talking about forbidden love. Daniel doesn't believe him. Max could not give a single shit if Daniel believes him or not, but observes that Daniel would know all about forbidden love, given his track record with Bethany. Max is the last to leave Daniel's class, and Daniel catches him acting shifty near his jacket, and on inspection it seems that Daniel's wallet is missing. He puts two and two together, blames Max and orders him back to his seat until he gets his wallet back. Daniel is quite shouty. He's not a great teacher, is he? Daniel tells Max that he can do this all day. Max doesn't care because he's playing a little game on his phone.
All of a sudden, Daniel is Captain America. I could do this all day.
I didn't get that.
No.
But then he gets a call from Tracy, who's babysitting for him. Daniel was warned earlier in the storyline, don't be late, because
Right.
Tracy's looking after Betty and she's not
Right.
going to be happy.
Yes.
So he tells Max to leave the classroom, but Max refuses until he's finished playing his game. So Daniel grabs his school bag and throws it out of the class. Great teacher. Back in the street, Daniel approaches Max, who still insists he's innocent. Why would he steal a loser's wallet? Daniel snatches Max and tries to rummage in his bag just as David comes along wondering what the hell is going on. So Daniel explains. Max empties his pockets to reveal no wallet. And by the way, this prick teacher has ruined dinner. His lasagna was in the bag that Daniel threw around the school.
Always comes back to lasagna, doesn't it? It's like they want to hear you say that. It's like they do it purposely so that you will do that on the podcast.
We used to have lasagna all the time in the UK. It was a kind of go-to.
Right.
You know how I make jambalaya all the time? My mum made lasagna all the time. And we'd never have lasagna here.
Well, we do, but it takes a lot of time, and neither one of us have an awful lot of time.
But
So
even
what
on
I
the
typically
weekend-
what I typically do is I will get a Stouffer's lasagna,
You can GTF it up.
and you don't like them, obviously.
There's no meat in it.
Yes, there is meat in the meat ones,
Very little.
but I tend to like the vegetable ones better with the white sauce. Those are my favorite. And you can go one day without eating meat, 1 day a week, mister.
Daniel explains what he's had to put up with, including jibes about Bethany. And Max throws David under the bus, saying that, well, it was him that told me,
Gavin Broom, eco warrior.
let it burn. And the sniping continues until Daisy comes along to break it all up. You'll pay for this, says David, in public.
Shouting
Overheard
on
by
the
everyone.
street.
Right.
Two men shouting at one another on the street about a stupid teenager.
In the house, Max insists he's innocent, but David lectures him for bringing up Bethany. Shona is angry at David and feels sorry for Daniel having to put up with all this shite, and all David's done is make Max's school life worse. Back home, Daniel is phoning around to cancel his cards, while Daisy, who's there, makes a cuppa. She tells him if he doesn't calm down, he could lose his job. She doesn't want to see him throw his career away for a gobby kid, and if he didn't see Max do it, then he can't be sure that he did.
Right.
Then Tracy phones again.
Daisy, voice of reason.
Right. Then Tracy phones for like the 5th time, just as David buzzes his buzzer. Daisy
But not like that.
Daisy urges Daniel to do what he can to defuse the situation. So David explains his position, and Daniel explains that he's tutoring Summer because he's been through the same uni process, and it's kind of working, but the fact that Max knows Daniel is making this whole situation worse. And then it kind of escalates from there.
Right.
It doesn't go well.
Right. Yeah, because he says, well, you know, that he and Daisy and, you know, point out that there are lots of other tutors. And David's like, yeah, well, Shona said the same thing.
Or I could look that up myself, thanks for your advice.
Right, yeah. And he still seems really snarky about it. And Daniel's right. You know, it's not easy tutoring a kid who you know outside of school.
And also who doesn't want to learn.
No.
The whole reason that he's doing this with Summer is because Summer wants to learn. Summer's keen.
Right.
Max is the opposite of that.
Or Max is insecure about learning and so puts on this facade, and it's really hard to break that facade with some kids, especially teenage boys.
Also, Daniel is making a mountain out of a molehill in some situations, like when Max was just chuckling out of class in the hallway with his pal. Joaquim, I think it was. Was it?
Javier.
And you began with a Spanish J. But, yeah, all they're doing is having a laugh. He needs to ignore that, but he makes a big deal out of it. What are you laughing at? And that's when the whole Bethany thing comes out.
Right, yeah.
So anyway, we end up that Daniel calls Max a thief. David tells Daniel he's not fit to be a teacher. And I think David's got a point. Daniel has got Bertie, and Daisy then heads off home. She's been there all day, and all she's done is listen to him bitch about Max. Well, no one asked you to stay, says Daniel. Nice, says Daisy.
Yeah.
And she leaves.
Yeah, here I am supporting you, and I don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
Don't need to.
But you have that big old house, so...
Right.
Back at number 8, David insists that Max is innocent because he said so. Well, teenagers never lie, says Shona. And David is talking about getting Daniel sacked.
Thank you, Shona.
David is talking about getting Daniel sacked, which Shona thinks is exactly solid parenting. And that takes us to the end of this storyline for this week, and also to this week's hard debate. Who on earth stole Daniel's wallet? Your options were Max, obvs, Daisy, there never was a wallet, or beyond the grave, Norris.
Or it's in his bag and he'll find it on Monday.
And we've got another suggestion, another good suggestion, a good solid suggestion that I wish I'd used. It's in Daniel's sex cardigan. So,
Yeah, that was funny.
the voting was thus. Daisy, 13.7%. There never was a wallet, 18.9%. And this I just love. Beyond the Grave Norris, 22.1%. More than a fifth of the vote. Everything else goes to Max, 45.3%. I think Max really did do it.
I still think it's in Daniel's bag.
Who puts their wallet in their jacket?
Not me.
Not me. My wallet is always in my pocket, my jeans pocket or my shorts pocket. I have to feel my wallet there all the time or I panic.
And mine is always in my Loungefly Doctor Who backpack because women's clothes do not have pockets large enough for a wallet.
Which is just ridiculous.
It is.
Think of the money that can be made by making a pair of jeans for a woman that holds a wallet and a phone.
But I do love my Doctor Who Loungefly
Well,
backpack.
there you go. And that's why people will never make those jeans.
Because my darling bought it for me.
That was a good present.
That was a
I
good
did
present.
well.
You did.
I gave myself brownie points for that. I'll go blind. So David's attitude is overblown or typical parent?
I think it's a little overblown.
It's a little overblown, but I think it's a little typical parent as well.
And I think it's overblown because it's Daniel. I don't think he would be this shouty with a teacher who he didn't know.
Right.
You know, the same with Max. I don't think Max would, because David's not hearing this from other teachers about how, of course, he's not bumping into other teachers in Roy's roles
Right.
where he can have the opportunity to say, hey, how's Max doing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that doesn't happen. It's like if Benny at some point is taking calculus with Mark Baker. I mean,
You waited until I was drinking coffee to say that.
I did.
Oh, it's in my nose.
And then on a Tuesday night, we say to Mark, "Hey, how's Betty doing in calc?" It's difficult when you're kind of living on top of one another in a small contained street.
Right.
So, which is, it's kind of like the whole Craig thing. It's like, well, fine, be a teacher, but maybe be a teacher somewhere where you're not going to have your neighbor's kid in your class.
It's the same with doctors as well. Don't be a doctor in your hometown because you'll never get out the supermarket.
Right.
Because people will be up to you. Oh, my back, doctor. Oh, I've got this tickly cough, doctor.
Daniel is also overblown. But again, it kind of feels like Daniel is more overblown at Max than he is about any of these. He wasn't shouty at Javier or at Max's other friends who were snarky and weird a few weeks ago. It feels kind of like Daniel feels this pressure of David's going to ask me about how Max is doing, so I have to make sure that Max is getting all his homework done and is doing the very best he can possibly do.
Mm-hmm. It's the relationship that's causing this friction, definitely.
Up to the point of not wanting to tutor him, in fairness.
I kind of feel that Daniel's reaction to this from the start I don't think he went through training being told this is the way you should deal with this.
Yeah. And as someone who has been through teacher training, you do go through classes that teach you how to deal with things like this.
Oh, yeah. And my cousin Stephen, who was a maths teacher in the UK before he moved to Spain, he would tell stories about kids in his class who are so disruptive, they ruin it for everyone. The kids that want to learn can't learn because they're so disruptive, and his hands are tied. There's so little that he can do
Right.
as a teacher now to try and subdue that situation. He can order the kid to leave, but if the kid refuses to leave, he can't make him, he can't drag him out,
Right.
because it'll be up for assault.
Yeah.
So teachers' hands are tied, and it's a very difficult job.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's doing himself any favours here.
It's not easy. And then there are politicians in this country who want them to carry guns now.
Jeez.
Can you imagine Daniel with a gun?
I can't think he'd shoot himself in the foot. Don't you?
Probably. This kind of feels like a storyline that's not suited for a soap opera, doesn't it? It's more like a sitcom sort of storyline.
Well, I don't know. I'm not laughing at it.
No, in a sitcom it would be funny. They'd make it funny. They're not trying to make it funny. They're trying to make it like really dramatic. and trying to get Daniel and David to come to blows over Max's grades.
I just think that they've brought Max in for being
They've made this huge deal about the new Max.
the new Max and the new. He's been given a storyline.
Mm-hmm.
The storyline, as you say, at the moment is he doesn't want to do his homework.
Right. There's got to be more to it, but I just...
There's also been a very distinct shift in Max's personality from old head to new head.
Yeah.
Because old head wasn't a dick. He was fairly easygoing and
He had his moments
he had his moments.
where
but
he
now
would
he's
run
like,
up the stairs
he would stomp
and
up
be
the stairs.
angry. But he was angry because his mum was dead.
Right.
You know?
And people kept forgetting that.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm living with the woman who's the mum of the person who killed my mum.
Right. And I mean, he did have the ADHD already. This was already something that he had that we were aware of. But it kind of... It makes it seem like all of a sudden they don't know how to deal with it. Or all of a sudden he can get away with saying things to David about, oh, well, because of my ADHD, they're, you know, toning it down. And David, who has been his primary parent for years and has dealt with his ADHD for years, he's all of a sudden able to pull the wool over his eyes. They don't have like a, well, I don't know what it would be called in the UK, but like a 504 plan where, you know, the parents go in and, you know, because this is a learning disability, there should be like a plan in place that the parents and the teachers get together and sort of plan, you know, to make accommodations for him. But that would be something that the parents would be involved in as well. So, yeah.
Moving on. Our next storyline this morning is Kelly on the inside. On Monday, Mia and Kelly the Chin are chatting and we learn that Kelly is expecting a visit today from Sharon the Heavy, Shazza. So Kelly and Shazza are chatting in the nice wee meeting area that they have in the prison. Sharon tells her about the mystery money that Imran has, and Kelly jumps to the conclusion that it must be from Rick the Chin, and Sharon for some reason lets her believe this. Behind her,
She does hesitate.
her pal Mia sees Sharon and has a very bad reaction to it. Mm-hmm. After the visit, Mia is in a bad mood with Kelly. She's worked out that Kelly the Chin is Rick the Chin's daughter. Like, the Chin didn't give it away.
Right.
She reveals that she's well aware of the work of Rick the Chin, who's the reason that she's in there and the reason that her mum's dead. She explains that her mum owed Rick thousands, but Rick had a reputation for making people go missing. Her mum ended up on drugs and died of an overdose, which led to her dealing, her being Mia. Kelly doesn't think any of this is her fault. Mia also doesn't think there's any chance that Rick is still alive. He wasn't the sort of guy to do a runner. If he disappeared, someone disappeared him. Mm-hmm. So Gary's in the Rovers when he gets a call from Kelly asking if he gave her the money and if her dad's alive. He lies and says that as far as he knows, Rick the Chin is alive and well. He promises to come visit her tomorrow and she hangs up on him. So Wednesday in the clink, Kelly wants to know about her dad from Gary. He tells her to forget the past. She tells him that Sharon said it was her dad's money that paid Imran and she wants to know where Rick is. And we don't see any more from that.
No.
And the next thing we know, we're back at the furniture thing where Gary is giving Sharon a hard time about giving Kelly false hope. And then they start throwing furniture at each other. And then they start making sweet, sweet love.
If only that happened.
Well, that's where that normally goes when they start throwing things at each other.
Right. Yeah. They're throwing like marble
No.
bookends at one another
Yeah,
or
they
something.
need to start making sweet, sweet love.
Yes. On the desk.
And that's as far as we get with that this
And
week.
then there'd be an amusing scene next week where Fizz is in the desk looking for a pen and instead she finds a used condom.
Or Sharon's knickers.
Yes. Which would be less gross than a used condom.
Feels like we're getting a bit closer to Kelly finding out that her dad's dead, which means that
Yes.
we're getting closer to Gary getting his comeuppance, which means that we're getting closer to Imran finding out that Gary essentially killed Rana.
Right. And hopefully
Please.
hopefully somehow in all of that we find some evidence that gets Corrie sent down. Because people are still quite angry about that. By people I mean me.
I'm still... Well, yeah,
And it's kind of
I'm still
annoying.
disappointed by it.
And it's kind of annoying that nothing has happened on that aspect at all this week. Or really last week.
Yeah, where's Abby got to?
Because last week, you know, we had Nina confronting Imran very briefly in the beginning. But then, you know, it was all about Kelly's suicide attempt, which apparently she's fine now.
Yep.
Yeah. I knew there had to be something with this girl. I knew it couldn't just
With Mia,
be.
yeah.
Yeah, I knew it couldn't just be a sweet friendship story.
No.
Sadly.
That's not how it goes in prison.
No.
If cell block H has taught me nothing else.
They like to throw DVD copies of How I Met Your Mother at you.
Right. And then run strangely by a burning cell. That's still my favourite bit of Corrie ever, I think.
And that Johnny really likes to play pool with his imaginary cat.
Whilst blind. The table's over here, Johnny. Our penultimate storyline this morning is
God.
Gracie's snag list. On Wednesday, they're doing it again with the Baileys.
Yeah.
They're doing it again.
Yeah, they are.
Grace is getting ready to leave and move into the new house. Michael offers to pay half the rent. Ed, though, looks like he has something that he's not telling them. And they don't want Michael to pay Grace. But if Michael does pay Grace, they want that money back.
Right.
Grace stomps to the builder's yard to complain about the lack of snagging
Right,
list.
yeah, because Michael is like, oh, I want to help out. I'm sad you're leaving, but I want to help out.
He's doing the decent thing.
Yeah, he's doing the decent thing. And Grace is very quick to say, oh, well, you can just give the money to me and then I will put it towards the rent. And Ed is just giving her a look like, how heavy are your balls?
Well, does it matter where the rent comes from so long as they get paid the rent?
But they're not getting paid any rent.
Not yet, she's not moved in.
No, she's not paying rent. They're not giving her the house. They're letting her live there, but she's living there rent free.
Was it rent free?
Yeah.
Oh, well, in that case, that's ridiculous. Right, okay.
Thank you.
Never get it. Now he gets it. Now he makes a move.
Oh, dear.
So Grace stomps to the builder's yard to complain about the lack of snagging list, or she and Glory will fuck off the hill and you'll never see us again. Aggie comes along and catches the end of this and is furious. We learn, though, that Paul is back working with Ed.
Yay.
So who's going to be sweeping up the floor at Trim Up North? That's what I want to know.
Well, Gail's back this week.
But there's a window of time where no one's sweeping up it. Because David's not doing it because he's too busy shouting at Daniel.
And not getting that sinkhole fixed.
On Friday. Well, that's Natalie's problem now, isn't it? Natalie. Not Natalie.
Sam's mum.
Sam's mum.
Natasha.
On Friday, James is off to training again for the first time, and asks Ed if he wants to come along, but Ed has to work on that fucking snag list for Grace and is starting to resent it. What a cow, says Aggie. Ed's with Paul in the pub. Paul's got overtime out of this, and Ed's mind is a million miles away and just wants Paul to get on with it on his own. James comes home from training and wants to celebrate with the family until Aggie explains that Ed is working too hard. They agree to celebrate at home with Aggie's marmalade chicken wings.
And now see, this almost sounds good. Because if it's orange marmalade...
It's orange
chicken. Yeah, basically.
But they try and make out that this sounds so awful that Danny, who's
a chef,
who's now there and as a chef,
well, it makes sense that Danny would offer to help and he's going to make them good. But, this is not the worst thing Aggie has ever said when it comes to food, because we're still doing this thing where, Aggie can't cook. Ha ha ha.
She's a woman.
Ha ha.
She can't cook, obviously.
Ha 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 ha. So funny.
So Aggie and Grace bump into each other at the tram stop. Aggie is furious that Grace is working Ed like a dog and they can't afford to go out with James and Danny. Danny comes along, which stops Aggie punching Grace's lights out, and Aggie plays the whole thing down in front of him, and then they go into the co-op to get the stuff for the dinner. And we get confirmation at that point that the Costa is out of here. The Costa shop has been replaced by the EE shop, which makes no sense to me.
No.
And that's as far as we get that this week. Is there something else going on with Ed? He seems terribly, terribly stressed about this.
Well, he's got to spend all of this time on this house that he's not making any money on.
Right.
He's spending money on it. He's not making money on it. And he's got to give up other jobs to do it. So he's not really making any money. And the only way he can make money is to hire Paul back. But then now he has to pay Paul.
He doesn't have a good history of paying Paul.
No. I'm glad Paul's back in the...
He needs to rob Peter.
Yeah. We haven't seen Peter in a while.
He needs to rob Peter to pay Paul.
Right. And somehow we're going to have to fit Mary in there somewhere.
I'm not getting a joke out of that at all.
It is a joke. It's funny.
Okay.
You're robbing Peter to pay Paul.
You're laughing with your eyes then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, this is also a saying in the United States.
So why doesn't James help out?
Because he's a footballer.
Because he can solve this immediately.
Right, but they don't want James to know about this. James doesn't know.
What does James care?
James doesn't know that they don't have any money.
Right, so tell him.
No.
He'll help.
No, because then James will tell Michael, and then Grace will run off to Hull, which is less than 100 miles away. I think James is going to find out, though, because Danny almost finds out. So Danny knows something's up. So
I don't know. This has fallen into being the Baileys operating in a little cocoon
yeah.
all on their own, with the exception of a very brief scene with
Paul.
and a couple of little scenes with Danny. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, it's a Bailey exclusive storyline,
Right.
Yet again.
And it makes it feel like the Baileys don't have anybody that they can confide in on the street. They have not made friends in the 2 years they've been here.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
So frustrating.
Yes.
Let's move on then to our final storyline, which is Goodbye Old Friend with Deaf Stuff. On Monday.
Deaf, not dev.
Mm-hmm. Or death.
Well, there's
A little
deaf
death.
stuff. But
On
no dev.
Monday.
I'm really kind of sad we don't get any dev this week.
Freda and Rita are chatting about the Paperboy statue outside the cabin, which Norris
Hated.
apparently always hated. Freda has arranged an interpreter for the funeral, and she hopes...
apparently, Norris's death is front page news in the Weather Gazette. Front page news. Goodbye, old friend.
That's on Friday.
Front page news.
We'll get to that. Freda has arranged an interpreter for the funeral, and she hopes that Muppet George has got his ducks in a row now. Well, I wouldn't put any money on it. Gemma's got an invite to meet up with one of the deaf kids' mums, and she wants to take Aled and leave Chesney to look after the nameless other three kids. But Ches has to go to work and suggests that Rita looks after them.
One of the cochlear implant mums, specifically, because this is an important key to this storyline, is the fact that she's buggered off to meet with these mums whose kids have had the cochlear implants.
George runs into Freda in Roy's Rolls and has a consignment of the orders of service. He lets her take a look and she's instantly furious. They've got the date of birth wrong. This entire funeral has been a fiasco. Bumbling George, that's what they're going to start calling him. At the funeral parlour...
Makes you wonder how he can stay in business.
The Undertaker is explaining what happened to Mary, who thinks Norris would find it funny to be 9 years younger.
Actually, I think he'd be quite pleased.
Yeah. Mary is far more subdued this week, so George lets her visit Norris. She'd never forgive herself if she didn't say goodbye. And Christ alone knows who's looking after Gemma's other kids, because next we see she's getting a bus to the hospital with Aled and Rita isn't looking after anyone. Freda goes to see Gemma, but Chesney's the one who answers the door, and he tells her that she's already gone to the playgroup at the hospital, which isn't the playgroup that Freda was talking about, and now I haven't got a fucking clue what's going on.
Right.
But you do.
Yes. Freda and Gemma are supposed to be going to the deaf playgroup. Gemma says to Chesney in the beginning that she's going to go and very quickly meet with these mothers with kids with cochlear implants, and she should be back in time to meet up with Freda to go to the deaf playgroup. Chesney never listens to anyone because he's an asshole. I wanted to find something clever to call him, but asshole is really the only thing that works.
It's a classic.
It is. And so has just kind of mushed all of this information in his brain that Gemma has told him to just assume that both playgroups are the same thing. But Gemma is running late, which is what causes the difficulty here.
And Chesney is also waking up from a nap in the middle of the day.
When he's supposed to be watching his other children.
Right. But there's only so much you can do with his name written on his back. Whatever that means. Mary fair enjoys herself seeing Norris and tells Undertaker about a flickery bulb. And this is all just to hide the fact that she actually is super upset about Norris being dead and all that.
Yes.
Then Freda meets Ken and Roy's Rolls. He's written Norris's obituary as Freda gets a mysterious text. She worries...
No, she doesn't get a mysterious text. Somebody tries to call her, and she says, "That's weird. Nobody ever calls me. Anybody who knows me wouldn't call me. They would text because I'm deaf.
I feel like I've been doing a bit of a Chesney here. I'm not really paying attention. She worries that she isolated Norris at the end from all his friends, but Ken helps put her mind at ease. And later, Gemma and Freda meet up hours late for the playgroup. Alad's operation is tomorrow, and she wanted to talk to other mums about it. Freda isn't too impressed, thinking Alad needs a connection with other deaf people. Gemma insists he will, and she won't stop teaching him sign language, she promises. On Wednesday, Bernie is singing there. Well, she's saying the words to There Must Be an Angel, let's put it that way. She's chuffed for Alad getting his operation. Ches and Gemma are a little bit more stressed about it. Gemma not looking forward to strangers drilling into Alad's head.
Right. Chesney, it doesn't seem... Chesney seems more stressed with Bernie singing than with this, because he's kind of the same mind as Bernie.
Very much so, yeah.
This is going to solve everything, and that Alad is just miraculously going to be able to hear sound now and understand songs and know what's going on, which is just so fucking ableist of both of them, and it just...
Freda's chatting to Roy about a glass hummingbird that she wants to put in Norris's coffin. The Undertaker comes along and informs them all that he and Todd are taking a deaf awareness course. But then Freda tells him about the hummingbird, and the Undertaker has to tell her that the coffin is now sealed. Todd left a voicemail for her yesterday. "I'm fucking deaf," yells Freda, and she storms off. Roy asks the Undertaker when his course is due to start.
that was so good.
Couldn't her phone read out her voicemail to her? Oh, she's deaf. She's deaf. But it transcribes it.
Sometimes.
And she has an iPhone.
Sometimes it transcribes, but it doesn't always. And it wasn't from... Oddly, it wasn't from, when it came up, it didn't come up that it was coming from the funeral home.
No,
it said unknown number.
Right.
So she's probably looking, I'm getting a phone call. I'm deaf, and it's from an unknown number. So it's probably somebody who wants to extend my auto warranty on my car or something, so I can ignore this. I don't need to pay attention to this. I have more important things to do because my betrothed is dead.
Freda comes into Roy Rolls while Bernie is showing a video of baby hearing its mother for the first time. Freda is determined to pop Bernie's bubble, telling her it's not like that. Alad will only be able to hear sounds he won't recognise as voices.
Right.
Bernie is sure Alad will be a star with his implants, and Freda tells her that attitude is helping no one. Freda needs to speak to Gemma about remembering Alad's deaf part. Bernie says he won't have a deaf part. He'll be normal.
Why don't you just punch her in the face right there?
So Freda goes to see Gemma, who's still up to Hideout. Freda
It's so
offers
awful.
to take Alad for a bit to give her some peace, and Gemma is thrilled to jump at the offer.
And Freda is absolutely right there with that video. That one video gets passed around an awful lot, and people, it's like that. It's like the one with the kid with the glasses who gets to see for the first time, and he gets a big smile on his face, and people are like, "Oh, he's got a big smile on his face because he recognizes his mother for the first time." And it's like, you're putting an awful lot of yourself on a wee baby whose brain is not fully developed yet.
Yeah.
And you're making some huge assumptions about why that baby is smiling.
That smile could be
Gas.
or being terrified.
Right. Yeah. It's like when people anthropomorphize dogs. It's the same thing.
Guilty of doing that. Our dog's smiling all the time, especially when he's doing this shit. There's a scene with Freda and her non-speaking friend as they coo over Alad, and then the interpreter arrives, and the three of them have a right old natter together using sign language, which Twitter exploded at. I don't know what they're saying. This isn't fair. I can't understand what they're saying.
Fuck you, Twitter.
The subtitles told you. The Undertaker wanders by and assumes they're all talking about him. That was funny.
Yeah.
Lisa, the interpreter, introduces herself and goes off to talk about the service with the Undertaker.
Yeah, she's nice. I like her.
Yeah, outside the kebab shop. She takes no shit from nobody.
No, seriously.
Outside the kebab shop, Bernie and Chesney are bitching about Freda and talking about Gemma as though once the implants are done, she can kick the deaf classes and all that to fuck. Chesney is looking forward to this, he says. Freda is over the road and lip reads the lot. Alad will finally fit in, says Bernie. Gemma rushes to the kebab shop thinking that Freda and Alad would be there by now. They're not, so Gemma and Ches go off to track the two of them down. Summer is waiting outside Daniel. See, this is it. There it is. There's that paragraph that's in the wrong story. Summer is waiting outside Daniel's and David is furious. There we go. That should be another story.
Oh, God.
Roy tells Gemma that he got the impression from Freda.
Right, because it's not even like they interact with anybody in this other story.
No, I've just completely missed it. Missed it. I could explain my process to you, but it would be boring. But I've put all these paragraphs, I number them, and I put them in order. And I've just missed this one. Roy tells Gemma that he got the impression from Freda that Bernie said something to upset her, and the whole Undertaker thing really got her wound up earlier. Gemma is now worried that Freda has taken Alad. Gemma, Chesney and Bernie reconvene at the kebab shop. Ches is a bit clueless as to what's going on, which I felt like. So Gemma sends him to Shady Acres, but not to live. Bernie insists that she didn't upset Freda. It was Freda who was dissing her vids, she says.
Right.
So Gemma
Not your vid.
Gemma calls Freda's friend and they sign language to each other over FaceTime outside the community centre, and that's when we see Freda is in there with Alad and has locked the door. Freda is doing sign language to Alad, who thinks that she's a nutter.
She tells her through sign language that she gave her the key to the community centre, and then they run to the community centre, and yeah.
Bernie bangs on the window, but Freda insists that she's telling Alad important stuff, so she refuses to unlock the door. Meanwhile, the interpreter is chatting to the Undertaker and the Rovers, warning that Freda is a right crazy fucker when she's had a drink in her, and Gemma bounds in and drags the interpreter away to help. Bernie is ready to bash the windows in. Alad's already late for the operation. The interpreter and Gemma beg Freda to give Alad back, but nope, she refuses. Bernie thinks this is a deliberate attempt by Freda to stop Alad getting his implants. Freda won't be happy until everyone's deaf, she says. She wants to call the police. The interpreter says Freda thinks that she's the deaf one, but they're the ones that aren't listening. Freda thinks that they're rejecting him, ignoring that he's deaf. Freda spends 5 minutes talking about her background and how hearing people dismiss deaf people and how Bernie wants Alad to be normal. And Bernie's going, well, I didn't really kind of say it like that.
Yeah, you totally said it like that.
Alad with implants is still deaf. He'll still miss stuff, but he'll pretend to understand so he doesn't feel left out.
Yeah, and we'll shake his head and we'll insist and we'll get angry when people are like, are you sure?
Right.
And we'll miss things.
Gemma insists that she'd never make him feel ashamed. Freda still reckons she knows best. In the deaf world, Alad will discover a beautiful language. In the hearing world, they'll focus on speech. Bring them together and he'll have both. And this seems to be a long pitch to make Gemma and Alad continue to learn sign language, which they always said that they were going to. And again, the blame for all this falls on Bernie.
Right, and a little bit on Chesney. And finally, Freda brings up, with this whole tweeting birds thing, the fact that people with cochlear implants, they're not hearing things the way hearing people do. It's mechanical because it's sound waves going directly to the brain. So even with cochlear implants, you're going to miss things and things are not going to sound the same. And living in that house with cochlear implants, with people shouting and yelling at one another and talking over one another constantly is going to be terrifying and stress-inducing.
Well, I think that's terrifying for anybody, not necessarily a deaf person. Back in the Rovers, it sounds like Billy's been given some religious work to do for once. He'll be officiating at the funeral, 2 weddings and a christening too. Mm-hmm. Gemma is angry at Bernie for making decisions for her and tearfully promises to continue with the sign language lessons. Freda continues to diss the cochlear implants, claiming that they sound mechanical. She wants Alad to be a first-class deaf boy, not a second-class hearing boy. Then Chesney appears. Alad's missed his operation.
She's right in that diss, though. So it's not really a diss. She's preaching the truth about these things.
Chesney appears. Alad's missed his operation cause Freda's keeping Alad to make us do a night class, he says. Fucking shift, he says, and he starts battering at the door. Chesney is Team Bernie here. Then Rita comes along and speaks to Freda and says, it's a shame about Norris and all that, and this seems to...
it deflates Freda a little.
It deflates Freda down. Alad needs his mum, says Rita, and the siege is over. Ches, though, has called the cops, and the interpreter starts signing Freda her rights, and PC Tinker is confused to fuck. Billy is round at number 8 to get some stuff from Audrey for Norris's funeral, and he leaves just as Gail comes back in with a lovely new hat. think you've got a hat like that, haven't you?
I have a couple of hats like that, let's be honest.
Gail has come home for Norris's funeral, which surprised me. The two weren't that close, and to come back from Thailand? Anyway. We'll just ignore how little that makes sense, because it's nice that Gail's back. Audrey starts modelling for some old names, and we're still alive and kicking, says Gail. It's all calmed down with Chesney and Freda and stuff. But Chesney thinks if Freda doesn't get within 100 yards of the kids now, Alec has lost his place on the list thanks to her. And then
he's assuming he's lost his place on the list.
Right.
He's being very presumptive here.
In Roy's rules, Freda has been given a slap on the wrist for kidnapping a baby. Bernie apologises
This
for
show
things,
really loves a kidnapped baby storyline, doesn't it?
And also-
a little too much.
and also loves giving out people slaps on the wrist when at least some community service should be dished out for taking a baby without permission. And
Well, technically she had permission to take that baby.
no, she was asked to hand the baby back several times, and she
Right.
refused.
Yeah.
She was holding the baby against Gemma's will.
Right.
But crimes have been committed here that
Yeah.
we're just skimming over
Right.
because of the whole Norris thing, probably.
Yeah.
Anyway, Bernie apologises for the things that she said earlier. She agrees that she's not normal either. She goes off to get herself ready for Norris's funeral tomorrow. Roy hopes that it'll be a fitting goodbye for an old friend. Ominous or what?
There's a lot of ominous stuff that goes on in this storyline. Mm-hmm. Like at one point, Audrey says to Gail something about, well, at least we're alive and kicking, you know, and every year you wonder, you know, after every one, you wonder who's going to be next.
The bit about the death thing, though, that annoyed me a little bit, and I think it's been kind of it's been ignored for the fact that Freda is grieving, is that Freda puts so much stock into what Chesney of all people thinks, and what Bernie of all people
Right.
thinks, and so little stock into what Gemma thinks, when the relationship that Freda's had really has been with Gemma.
Well, I think
And they've built up a fairly close
Friendship, yeah.
here. And Gemma has always insisted that she's going to keep up with the sign language,
Yeah.
no matter what.
I think what the problem is here is that is Gemma missing that play
Right, missing that
group.
one.
If she hadn't missed that one, and if Chesney hadn't blabbed about, you know, the fact that she'd missed it because she was talking to these mothers with whose babies have had cochlear implants.
This baby, right?
You know, I think that's it, because that makes Freda worry. Because Freda says in the community garden that she's really happy that the family is still going to continue to do BSL, and that's the thing that's really kind of given her some peace about the whole cochlear implants. Because she doesn't seem to not want Aled to have the cochlear implants. She just wants to make sure
Right.
the family understands he's still going to be deaf, and you can't treat him like all of a sudden he's a hearing person.
But you've got to think that the hospital and the doctors and the surgeons are giving Gemma and Chesney the same message. And at the end of the day, it's got fuck all to do with Freda. It's none of her business.
I'm still really glad that they did this, though.
I'm glad that they did it as well. And
I
think
kind of wish that they had done it in a way that didn't make the deaf person out to be this crazy person who steals
right,
babies.
Exactly. But from what I see on the Twitter from people that I chat with who are deaf or who are partially deaf or who know deaf people, they're thrilled at this storyline. They were
Right.
thrilled at the deaf world getting a bit of an airing on Coronation Street. And so for that reason,
Yes.
and that reason alone, it doesn't fucking matter what I think about it.
That's true.
If it's making these people happy, I'm happy. If it's
Yeah.
an accurate representation of what it's like to be deaf in a hearing world, then I'm happy.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
moving on. On Friday, Rita has placed a photo of Norris on the Weather Gazette sign with "Goodbye, old friend."
Yes. Front
Or-
page news.
Audrey, stop the presses.
Norris has died.
What a
And
scoop.
they use a 20-year-old picture of him.
Right. Audrey comes along and reckons that they broke the mould when they made Norris. Rita reckons that they broke the mould before that, and no one knows what that means.
Seriously.
The
I was
fuck
like,
does that mean?
how does that work, Rita?
He was just a blob. Freda catches
Or
Gemma
he was made broken?
and Chesney to apologise. She asks Gemma along to the funeral, but Chesney refuses on her behalf because he's a dick and still butthurt about missing the
God, I
thing.
hate him so much.
Claudia and Audrey greet each other as they prepare to head for the funeral, and Mary, who's dressed as Princess Leia for some reason, hopes it'll kick off between the two of them before the wake.
Well,
That
that's
was
what
funny.
she wore. That's what she wore when they got married, yes?
No. A horse-drawn carriage brings Norris's coffin down Coronation Street, the stapler positioned carefully or precariously, depending on your viewpoint, on top as they go down a cobbled street. Leanne, who can't get a break for love nor money, watches on from the bistro. In the church, Billy's actually doing some vicaring. Claudia is missing Norris's shuttlecock, and she makes a strange motion with her hand as she says that. Mary is quizzed by Audrey about her attire, but insists that Norris would get it, but not like that. Audrey has a hip flask of tequila, and she, Mary and Gail get wired in. Mary apparently has also been taking some unknown medication from the bottom of Audrey's handbag.
Right. Audrey gave her a pill to calm her down.
Right.
She doesn't know what it is.
Billy starts the ceremony, which is always
That
great.
sounds safe,
Mystic-
doesn't
right.
it?
Billy starts the ceremony by explaining that Norris wasn't religious and he's left some very specific instructions, so shit's about to get totally fucked up here. The opening hymn is number 354 in the Red Book in the pews, By the Rivers of Babylon. Gemma arrives just as Rita tells her Norris story. When she met him, she found him an arrogant shit, and he was. She threatened to kill him at least once a week, but he had a great sense of humour and thought she was joking. He stuck by her side when she had a brain tumour that time and ate her grapes when she woke up. She'd be dead without him.
But not like that.
Goodbye, old friend, she says. And next up is a surprise speaker to read Norris's final letter to his friends. It's Roy, who clearly had no idea of what was happening, and Ken looked like he thought that he was getting the gig because he spent the time writing the eulogy, so he's pissed off at this.
Is he? Is he really?
Audrey gets wired into tequila as Roy reads Norris's letter. Don't let the fact that I'm dead spoil your day. He had a great life with wonderful friends and people that he didn't care for. First donkey up is Freda. She gave
Is
him...
Audrey ever sober in this show
don't think so.
anymore?
She
Every
gave-
time we see her, she's so drunk.
She gave him this idea through her constant badgering about his funeral. He doesn't see any point in playing songs he likes, so he's going to start playing songs that he hated instead. Turning to Mary now, she was another constant badgerer about his funeral. One time, to get her to shut up, he requested that she attended dressed as Princess Leia, but even Mary isn't daft enough to fall for that one. So now Mary is feeling rather sheepish.
Yes.
Here's to you, my lovely neighbours and friends, and Audrey drinks to that. Then Norris leaves a puzzle, telling everyone that he hid something valuable in the cabin paperboy. And lastly, he tells Rita, if she's still kicking about, that she was the sunshine of his life.
Right.
If Sleepless in Seattle taught me anything, it's difficult not to bang your closest friends. What? Shouts Rita. Mary looks like she's ready to pass out. Sorry I didn't shag you, he says, but I spent many happy years with you, and I'll never tell that you get your colour done at Claudia's.
And I think
Norris out.
I think he's mistaken. I think he means when Harry met Sally.
yeah.
Because
Sleepless in Seattle.
it
doesn't
has
cover that.
nothing about friendship. They don't even know one another because one is in Seattle and one is in New York.
Audrey is furious that Rita betrayed her, and then Copacabana starts by Barry Manilow. The reception, or wake in this case, is at the bistro. Freda knew about the letter, but she hadn't read it. Now she's worried that Audrey's nose is totally out of joint. And Audrey's still upset about Rita's wig, hair. Shocker, says Claudia, as Audrey goes for another drink. Ken urges for calm. His plea falls on deaf ears, though. Audrey's had enough and she leaves. Meanwhile,
Anytime Ken has the opportunity to tell women what to do, he's going to take it.
right. Meanwhile, Mary is still embarrassed about her costume and wishes that she'd got a chance to sing her farewell to Norris, but her harpist had an accident slicing a pineapple yesterday. Whatever that means. Gemma will miss Norris. He treated her well when she arrived, and in other news, Alad's operation has only been postponed for a few weeks.
Yeah. So not a big deal. Fuck you, Chesney.
Ken checks in on Mary, who is sad to realise that Norris had lots of people more important to him in his life than her. To cheer herself up, she decides to go and see what's in the paperboy, and despite himself, Ken follows on interested. Outside the kebab shop, Gemma is happy to forgive Freda now that Alad's operation has been rescheduled. Chesney still isn't happy, and then Gemma announces that she
But
has...
who fucking cares what Chesney thinks?
Then Gemma announces that she has a BSL app to help them learn on her phone, and Chesney still isn't happy.
Yes, he's like, well, we still have 5 kids, to deal with. Do we really have... And Gemma's like, 30 minutes a night.
Do we really have time to learn how to communicate with one of them?
Right. Yeah. It's like, what if Aled had been born with something that couldn't be improved?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what would happen then? Chesney and Fizz, you could tell that they are siblings because they're both awful parents.
Mm-hmm.
Chesney is going to push everyone out of his life by being a dick, isn't he?
But people forgive him. That's just Chesney.
Why?
Mary has sourced a chainsaw from Paul, but she can't get it started and is pushed out of her tits. So Brian
And also
steps
high
up
as a kite.
before Mary. No, because it turned out to just be a
Be a
tic-tac.
tic-tac.
Or so they say.
All right.
So Brian steps up before Mary slices off her donuts. Brian takes an obviously non-functioning chainsaw to the paperboy's head.
Funny calling them donuts.
And now it's been
Cinnamon
decapitated.
buns.
They found nothing. Rita reminds everyone that Norris hated that paperboy.
Right.
And Freda thinks this is Norris fucking with their heads from beyond the grave, getting them to destroy something that he hated.
Right.
Then Mary, who still hasn't got a chance to sing her song, starts singing her song. And it's goodbye. And everyone joins in. And that's how we end this week's episodes.
Mm-hmm. That was a good ending.
It was a cracking funeral. I thought, this
Yeah.
is just... I was laughing out loud
It was-
pretty much all the way through it.
It was just funny enough.
Right.
You know, it didn't go to the place of Audrey and Claudia fighting over a casket and it falling over and dumping dead Nigel Havers out.
No, and it didn't go, it's a mad, 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 mad world by everyone running out of the church to find the
right.
paperboy.
Right.
They got to it eventually.
Yes.
So there was a bit of farce in there, but there wasn't too much of it.
Right.
The speech that Roy was reading out, you could hear Norris say most of it, and the bits that you couldn't hear Norris say, you could hear Alan Partridge say the rest of it.
The fact he made Roy read that out was hilarious.
Roy.
Having Roy say those things.
Roy seems that he can't read, and the way that
I think he was just uncomfortable with some of that stuff,
I know,
which I can believe that Roy would be.
Would you drop that on? It's fiction, so who cares? But it was funny that he got the gig, Ken didn't, because Ken's expecting it, and it was
Well, I feel like if Ken was expecting it, he would have been given it by
he
now.
was writing the eulogy,
Right.
and telling
For the
Freda about
paper.
it.
Yeah.
No, for the funeral.
No, it was for the paper. It was for the Weather Gazette. Because after Freda says, yes, this is lovely, I approve this, Ken says, well, then I will get this to the Gazette right away.
That's not a eulogy that you put in a newspaper.
That's what Ken said. I will get this to the Gazette right away. And they don't also, in the newspaper for a eulogy, put goodbye, old friend, and a big, massive picture on the front page of that
Well, that was
person
Rita
either.
that did that. The paper didn't do that.
No, because it says Weatherfield Gazette over it.
It always says Weatherfield Gazette over it.
No, like it's a paper.
Rita did that. It wasn't in the paper.
Yes, because Rita is an expert when it comes to printing things out.
Well, maybe she got someone to do it for her. It's not in the paper.
It isn't a paper.
Of course it's not.
It's front page news.
Of course it isn't. Of course it isn't.
Because that's what that's for. It's for the paper.
Yeah, so that she's made this to put in it.
Yes, because Rita is very skilled in printing.
Which is far more likely than it being the front page news. The reason
Would have
why
been
you think it's so ridiculous is because it's ridiculous. It's because it didn't happen. Anyway,
Yeah.
it was nice to see Billy have some proper vicaring to do.
Yes, that was nice. I was amused by Gail's hair.
Although it was kind of taken out of his hands a bit.
Right.
By Norris kind of took
Right.
over the whole show, so Billy had actually very little to do.
It was like, well, what? He's just saying, okay, and now it's time for blah, blah, blah. And now it's time for blah, blah, blah. And now it's time for blah, blah, blah. I'm sure there are bits that we didn't see that would be in like in a normal funeral.
I think we just missed the songs because of copyright reasons, but
Gail's hair.
yeah, I thought what did I miss about Gail's hair?
She's supposed that she's got a towel wrapped around it like she's just washed it, but it's bone dry.
Well, the towel's doing its job then.
Her bangs are bone dry and they look all done.
Was it a towel or was it a pashmina?
You don't wrap a pashmina around your hair.
Fucking hell.
It would make it go all staticky. That's the thing that was amusing people. It amused me. It's like, what is she? Is she pretending that she's just had a wash because her hair's bone dry? What's up with this? But yeah, I liked like all the pictures and stuff that we fade to all the pictures and everything, and I thought it was a really nice send off, and it just. I feel like there's some fan service there, but it's appropriate fan service. Oh, it's absolute fan
service, yeah. And the way that ended with the goodbye and the looking at the pictures and stuff was totally...
It's also a big fuck you to Robert, but, I guess he wasn't in the show as long as Norris was, so...
Nobody cared.
He's still in the Undertaker's closet.
Yeah. There was some chatter on Twitter about it would be a great storyline if they find him behind a jar of pickles or something.
Right.
But, well, there's... Oh, we didn't bury him.
Yeah, he was right next to Pat Phelan on the shelf, but Todd just doesn't care.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a great send off. You're right, it was pitched pretty well. It was the kind of thing that if somebody who has the kind of gift of that public speaking thing at a funeral, you can imagine you'd be sitting in the funeral chuckling away at these memories and stuff. It kind of had that real life.
Yeah.
The funeral is supposed to be a celebration, and that was absolutely a celebration.
Absolutely.
Of Norris's life and his tomfoolery.
Yeah, his personality was well represented there.
Totally came through.
It worked really well, and I'm glad that they toned down the whole Mary versus Freda stuff. I'm glad that seemed to have gone away by the time of the funeral, because it was really starting to annoy me quite a lot, and it felt like a little too much.
I think I did a little bit of a disservice there for Mary last week.
Yeah.
Because that was her in grief. Mm-hmm. That was her dealing with grief.
Yes.
They kind of did it in a semi comedic
right, or
fashion.
An attempt at comedic fashion.
Right. But her reacting like that as well, people react oddly.
Yeah.
In grief, and
it's true.
And all that. And last week I was just like, she was just such a pain in the arse, and she was just being so horrible.
I was really sad for Freda and the hummingbird.
Oh yeah,
and I really liked the story of where she thought she saw a hummingbird, but they don't get hummingbirds in the UK apparently. So, and it kind of reminded me of your mum's hummingbird that we have.
Oh, and
her hummingbird chimes.
Yeah.
Hanging in the kitchen.
I banged my head on those fucking things every time I walked into the kitchen, and for years and years, you think I'd learn, but nope. Every time I walked into the kitchen, banged my head.
Nope. It didn't help that your mum's house was a hobbit house.
And my mum was 4'11".
Yes.
Yeah. What was your moment of the week?
It's got to be something to do with the funeral, yes?
Yeah, I think just the funeral in general.
Yeah.
It's the long moment of the week.
Or is it them like gathered around
the
newsboy, the now headless newsboy, and singing the song towards the end, kind of bringing it to a close?
Oh, do you know what? Yeah, let's go with that.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's really the final farewell to Norris then. It's our
moment of the week.
Your boring moment of the week. Now Daniel was in it, but I don't think Daniel did anything boring.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, I find these two dudes shouting in the street more than once kind of boring.
Right.
Is it Daniel and Summer talking about Oxford and how to get into Oxford, and the fact that Daniel got into Oxford, but then he had to turn it down because blah, 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 blah. It's a long story.
Do you know, I said that it isn't Daniel, but it is Daniel.
It's totally that.
It's Daniel saying that when you get into Oxford, you can take me to the blah, blah, blah museum.
Right. And some are apparently not knowing what a museum is.
Right. So which means kids these days not knowing what a museum is. That's our boring moment of the week. Daniel, you do yourself no favours. That's our
boring moment of the week.
Appropriate.
So, shall we wrap this one up then?
Y'all's please.
If you've ever told someone to decapitate a statue in hopes of getting the treasure of Sarah Madry, Rita said that wrong. She had Sayara Margie or something.
Well, she's got an accent.
You can write to us to tell us about it. We're the talkofthestreet@gmail.com.
You know what?
and
I'm gonna start that sort of rumor about every statue of Andrew Jackson in this country.
Yeah, and there's a couple of trees in our yard that could be getting taken down as well. And we are at Corrie Podcast on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. You can shout me and Helen a coffee by heading to ko-fi.com. That's ko-fi.com/the talk of the street. Check out the clicky section of woggle.co.uk for links to our merch store and YouTube channel. And if you're so inclined, please leave a rating and a review on the iTunes or your podcast provider of choice. Thanks for making it to the end of another episode, and we will be back next week with more
Talk of the Street.
The Talk of the Street.
Bye.
Cheerio.